What's going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Got another video here to you, coming at you here from Arbiter Ian, another 40k video. This one is the Badab War, retrospective from the 80s White Dwarf to the 2000s Imperial Armor, 40k archives. I'm looking at the description. It says the Badab War is one of the most interesting bits of background of the Warhammer 40k universe, a Space Marine civil war intended early in the days of the Rogue Trader and then returned to again by Games Workshop and Forge World, and a direct predecessor to the Horus Heresy series. So interesting. I hadn't heard that, yeah, there was any kind of other Imperial, Space Marine Astartes civil war that happened beforehand. And if there was in the lore, I mean, obviously it's not as significant as the Horus Heresy, or wasn't as great and widespreading, or have as great as implications. So I'm interesting to learn more about this, and if it is actual story, or if this has been like written out of the lore, etc. So anyway, let's, I guess, take a look at this. As always, links down below in the info section to Arbitor Ian's channel and this original video without my reaction and commentary. If you do me a favor and check the join button down below, look at the YouTube membership benefits, see if any of those have any interest to you. We have a Discord. I do some private live streams for my YouTube members, and we have a bunch of discussions with that. I have a book stream. Some of the stuff's open to everyone, some of the stuff is done privately, so check out that stuff, see if it has any kind of interest to you. If you have been around my channel for a while and you enjoy the content that I create and you want to take that support to the extra level. But regardless of any of that, I just appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out and watching the videos. So let's just get right into it and be done with the shameful plugs. Bada boom, bada bing. Volume's good. Let's go.
Shapeshifter. Didn't see that coming.
Wait, what?
So Huron's an alien shapeshifter.
I don't know who that is.
Didn't see that coming.
Don't know who that is.
The Badab War is a recurring part of the 40k background that's been around since the days of Rogue Trader. It's the story of how a group of Space Marine chapters rebel against the Imperium and the localized civil war that follows. But this isn't the usual 40k story of worlds or chapters falling to chaos and Space Marines battling warp-spawned horrors.
So it sounds like it's just a much more like a minor rebellion that happened for maybe a couple of chapters on a specific planet. Something like that. So maybe that's why it's not talked about as much. Maybe it's one of the things that's kept secret. I wonder if it would have any ties to, I guess, lore-wise, to the two legions that have been redacted. Maybe some of them are involved in some way. I don't know.
The thing that makes the Badab War interesting is that it's almost always been a story about the mismanagement and inefficiency of the Imperium, and how its own institutions can easily end up on opposing sides. And for practical reasons, that's a really useful thing to have in the background. It's an example of why two players' Space Marine forces might end up fighting each other,
right,
which is useful in the early days of any game, especially when there are limited model kits available. In this video, I'm going to look at the history of the Badab War's existence within the 40k background, from its first mention to its most recent incarnation, and how the story has evolved over the years. What I'm not...
Or what is that? What is interesting is that I'm assuming it's some kind of Titan model. I was just like noticing that in the background here. Looks kind of dope, but I mean, is that like a Emperor's Children's Titan? Is that their colors or something like that? I don't know. It looks interesting though.
Not going to do is tell you the entire story in minute detail. This will be long enough, and I'll save that sort of thing for another video. The Badab War first appears in a 3-page article in White Dwarf 101, May 1988. Later reprinted.
Damn, 88, brother. That's some, yeah, this is some old school lore. Old school lore then, yeah. I was 6 years old.
In the White Dwarf Compendium in 1989. This is only a few months after the release of Rogue Trader in 1987, and White Dwarf's really ramping up the amount of 40k content it's doing. The scene is set in this first half page of text. In 901 M41, Lufthuron, the master of the Tiger Claws, attacks an Imperial fleet. In 40k, chapters of Space Marines are required to send a portion of their gene seed back to Terra every so often to check purity and sort of work as a reserve, and the Adeptus Mechanicus had long complained of the Tiger Claws' tardiness in submitting these.
Who are the Tiger Claws? They're a faction, chapter, or whatever that I've never heard of. So I'll have to look that up.
When the Imperium sends a fleet to investigate, the chapter rebels, mostly...
For some reason, it's like reminding me of the gang in Cyberpunk. They're Tiger something or other. Maybe, I don't know. I forget what they're called. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Maybe they're called like the White Claws or something in Cyberpunk. I don't know. It's reminding me of the faction in Cyberpunk for whatever reason.
These. When the Imperium sends a fleet to investigate, the chapter rebels, mostly due to Luthor himself being a power-hungry and ambitious individual who should never have risen to power within a Marine chapter. This is repeated a lot. Also, he might be an alien shapeshifter or a recently manifested psyker. It doesn't elaborate, but the theme seems to be that whatever...
Infiltrated by heretical Xenos. Makes sense.
Systems exist to stop a power-hungry maniac from taking control of a Marine chapter in the Imperium have failed, and the Imperium is going to pay the price. In 903, 3 other chapters join the war: the Lamenters, the Mantis Warriors, and the Executioners, and they capture a Firehawk ship while attacking Imperial shipping.
Yeah, I don't know any of these that he's talking about. These must be some other like sub-chapters or something that maybe they're old and they are part of the lore anymore, because this is stuff from the 80s or what?
The Executioners, and they capture a Firehawk ship while attacking Imperial shipping. The Emperor himself recalls the Marines errant to help out, but they mostly end up protecting shipping lanes. The Red Scorpions and Minotaurs are redeployed to the area and secure the space lanes, ending the threat to shipping in 906, and the Red Scorpions tag out in 907 for the Nova Marines and the Howling Griffins, who continue the space patrols. In the meantime, the Star Phantoms besiege Badab itself, while the Minotaurs go after the Mantis Warriors, and by the end of the war in 912, elements of the Exorcists, Fire Angels, Salamanders, Space Sharks, and Sons of Medusa have all been involved.
Jesus. What? I have never heard of like any of these, except for the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs have been one that I've been requested to look up, and it's so far down my list I just haven't got to yet. But I promise you, I will eventually get to them.
Fire Angels, Salamanders, Space Sharks, and Sons of Medusa have all been involved.
Space Sharks. Space Sharks. That's so 80s, dude. That's so 80s, the Space Sharks.
Fire Angels, Salamanders, Space Sharks, and Sons of Medusa have all been involved. In the aftermath, the Mantis Warriors, Lamenters, and Executioners are given the Emperor's forgiveness after a 100-year penitent crusade. The remaining Tiger Claws run the Star Phantom's blockade, and around 200 Marines get through, but nobody ever hears of them or Lufthuron again. So that's the broad outline as it stands in Rogue Trader.
Okay.
Huron was a flawed individual, and when the Imperium insisted he pay his tithes, he rebelled, which escalated into a long and complex conflict, bringing in elements of loads of loyalist chapters.
Yeah, it sounds like they're crushed eventually.
The real thing remembered from this article is the Space Marine illustrations by Gary Chalk. At this time, this would have been a huge expansion of published...
I mean, yeah, they all, for the most part, kind of look the same, really. It's just... yeah, the different colors and factions. I assume that a lot of these are just older chapters that, you know, eventually as lore got fleshed out more, these were replaced or disappeared and rewritten or something like that. You know, dude, Space Sharks. Like, look at that. That's so 80s, Space Sharks. Okay, brother. Anyway.
The Space Marine illustrations by Gary Chalk. At this time, this would have been a huge expansion of published Space Marine chapters. Most people would only have seen the 12 Rogue Trader ones. But one of the things that makes them so interesting now is all the variant schemes and camo patterns that various chapters used in various campaigns. Some chapter schemes and symbols are recognizable. The Red Scorpions, Marines Errant, and Lamenters are all relatively similar. But some are totally different, like this Sons of Medusa symbol, or this, the first mention of the Salamanders in their original lizard skin scheme. Over the next 20 years, mentions of the Badab War pop up here and there in the background, from full retellings of the story to occasional additions in little box outs. The story often comes up in the various Chaos Space Marine codices, like this, the second edition Chaos Codex, the first to feature Huron Blackheart as a special character. In this book, Badab is a strategically important system, positioned as a bulwark against a squat invasion, but mostly to protect from pirates and predators in the Maelstrom.
What? About something was like a core almost the border between the Imperium and the areas claimed by the squat leagues. Okay, so I guess this is like some other kind of human faction or whatever that obviously is not a part of the Imperium yet. And so it like, yeah, Badab like borders their territory. Badab is well positioned to protect the Imperium from unlikely event of a squad invasion. It was actually occupied by the Imperial Space Marines because of its proximity to a giant permanent warp storm called the Maelstrom. Okay. So is this later what became Cadia? Because this sounds like Cadia in the Eye of Terror. Maelstrom is marked by a huge number of gas levels exposed insurmountable difficulties of patrolling. Automatic Maelstrom become refused for advance. Heretics has estimated over 20 orc empires and pirate kingdoms lurk within its sticky pall. Okay, interesting.
This book, Badab is a strategically important system, positioned as a bulwark against a squat invasion, but mostly to protect from pirates and predators in the Maelstrom, a huge warp storm. In the story, Lufthuron is now the chapter master of the Astral Claws, who randomly destroy an Imperial investigation fleet in 901. Though it doesn't say what it's investigating. Looking into this, the Inquisition discover the issues with the Gene Seed ties, and shortly afterwards the Astral Claws declare secession. They destroy 2 more Imperial fleets in 902 and 903, and are then joined by the Mantis Warriors, Lamenters, and Executioners. After this, the story unfolds pretty much like the Rogue Trader one. The Firehawks are the first Space Marine chapter attacked by the Secessionists, the Imperium send a first wave of chapters to end the shipping threat, and then a second wave to invade Badab itself. The main addition here is what happens after the war. After being wounded in the final battle in the Palace of Thorns on Badab, Lufthuron flees into the Maelstrom with the remnants of the Astral Claws and becomes Huron Blackheart, a renegade pirate king and lord of the Red Corsairs, a force of renegade marines from various chapters.
Okay, so is this, I guess, kind of the first idea iteration edition of the Chaos Space Marines then? Before, I guess, maybe they introduced Chaos as like an actual faction? Because that's what it seems like. It seems like Badab, maybe it's a prerequisite to Cadia, or maybe this is like the other side of the Maelstrom. Because, I mean, we're talking about space and galaxy and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm sure that, like, it's a large encompassing area, and there's probably multiple planets that could be around the Maelstrom, you know, Eye of Terror. So it could be that this is, you know, a planet. Oh, excuse me. Well, dude, I'm so tired, guys, so I apologize. I keep yawning. But anyway, could be that this is, you know, a planet that's on another part of the Maelstrom that, you know, is also, you know, kind of like Cadia as like the first stop to an invasion kind of a thing. I don't know.
Pirate king and lord of the Red Corsairs, a force of renegade marines from various chapters. Here he's armed with the Tyrant's Claw, a massive bionic arm to replace the one he lost at Badab, and is accompanied by a strange alien creature called a Hamadria, who gives
Looks kind of like an early Tyrannid.
Him psychic powers. In the second edition codex, Huron is also your way of taking a renegade chapter as opposed to just a chaos one, and his special rules allow you to take Imperial Terminators and support vehicles in your chaos army.
Okay.
Third edition had 2 chaos codices.
So it almost kind of looks like it's like if you wanted to like mix chaos with some loyalist stuff or whatever, but still like not be affiliated with the loyalists, but not necessarily affiliated with chaos. You could kind of like almost like you could make like a hybrid faction. I guess I think that's what I'm getting from what he's saying. That'd be interesting for like tabletop gameplay.
Real Terminators and support vehicles in your Chaos army. Third edition had 2 Chaos codices. Huron's absent from the first one, but he reappears in the second one in 2002. There isn't a lot of new fluff here. In this, the Astral Claws had the sole responsibility for guarding the Maelstrom, and in the aftermath, the Imperium suspect the taint of Chaos. But then they always do. White Dwarf 303 in 2005.
I don't know, that cover though. The new Skyward Shire White Dwarf for the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. Okay, I would all, you know, the I can't think of the name of it now, but there was a really good. It was made by the same guys that did Command and Conquer after EA bought Westworld, but they had the Battle for Middle Earth, the Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle Earth games 1 and 2. Those were goated RTS games, man. I missed the RTS genre back when it was, you know, Command and Conquer, StarCraft, Battle for Middle Earth, you know, those kind of goofy-ish strategy real time. I don't know, man. I just miss the RTS genre, dude. I wish it would make a comeback. I know it's not like it died off because it's not very mainstream, and it's a difficult kind of genre for people to get into kind of competitively, but I still miss those games, and I really just played a lot of them for the story. I loved Command & Conquer and the Command & Conquer story. Same with StarCraft. I still occasionally will play through the story of StarCraft 2. You know, I'll still play through the various chapters, etc., etc. I don't know, man. I just miss those games. I love strategy games. I wish we could get a revival of the RTS genre. I know that I forget what it's called, but there is a real-time strategy game that's kind of still in the alpha stages. It's being developed by some OG devs from the old StarCraft and Command and Conquer teams that I think have been put together, you know, and creating something. So there's a couple other things that I've seen, but anyway, enough of this ramble and tangent.
Taint of chaos, but then they always do. White Dwarf 303 in 2005 includes Index Astartes' Rogue Sons, an article about the various renegade chapters. In this, the Badab uprising is used as an example that there can be degrees of rebellion. The Lamenters, Mantis Warriors, and Executioners simply found themselves on the wrong side of the conflict, and it would seem that hubris rather than heresy kept them fighting for more than a decade. Otherwise, the Badab uprising here is a reprint of the original story, though it also points out that in the aftermath of the siege of Badab, Lufthuron made a pact with the ruinous powers, pledging eternal service in return for the blessings and patronage of chaos. Huron's back again in the 4th edition Chaos Codex, but there's nothing new here. A bigger expansion comes in the 4th edition Cities of Death book, which includes the final battle at the Palace of Thorns as a good example of urban combat. In this story, the refusal to send Gene Seed is still the cause of the conflict, but the Mantis Warriors, Lamenters, and Executioners join the Astral Claws in protest over the Imperium's apparent willingness to turn against a Marine chapter. In this battle, the Star Phantoms lead a drop pod and Thunderhawk assault against the Palace of Thorns under cover of a colossal orbital bombardment. Infiltrating Star Phantoms fight underneath the palace against Astral Claws, who are described as specialists in hit-and-run and guerrilla tactics. Eventually, the Loyalists destroy the planet's power generators, silencing the guns and allowing a major push. And it's Captain Androcles of the Star Phantoms who wounds Thuron before his escape. So you can see how little details are added here and there, but all these threads are then tied together in the biggest release on this list, Forge World's Imperial Armor series. This was the first time Imperial Armor had delved into an existing part of the 40k world. Previous Imperial Armor books had been about new conflicts, and the writer Alan Bly talked about the process of gathering up all the bits and pieces seeded over the years and trying to make a cohesive narrative out of them, one that has the same sort of in-depth detail.
That would be a job that could be both cool but also extremely difficult, you know, because sometimes when you have things that can be so obscure, it can be really hard to really kind of piece together things and try to make a coherent story out of it. But it could also be pretty fun to try to do. Yeah, I don't know. I would assume it must have worked out somewhat well.
Expected and trying to make a cohesive narrative out of them, one that has the same sort of in-depth detail expected by the Imperial Armor series. Originally planned as one book, the narrative grew so much that it had to be split into two. Imperial Armor Volume 9, The Badab War Part 1, was released in October 2010, with Volume 10, The Badab War Part 2, a few months later in January 2011. In the Imperial Armor books, the Astral Claws are the leaders of a group of chapters called the Maelstrom Warders, formed to patrol the Maelstrom and nearby Imperial space. The other members of the Warders are the Mantis Warriors, the Lamenters, and the Charnel Guard. But the Charnel Guard are retasked elsewhere, and with the Warders depleted, the Astral Claws consolidate on the Badab system and start to massively increase the fleet and PDF forces. As the Badab sector gets stronger and stronger, the new Astral Claws chapter master, Lufthuron, petitions the Imperium for more forces so they can push into the Maelstrom and try and subdue it forever. Repeatedly refused, in protest he closes space lanes, redirects all materials towards strengthening his forces, and withholds the Gene Seed tithe. Various other interactions with the Imperium follow, including pushes by the...
So he wants to go into the Maelstrom to essentially defeat whatever forces are there, potentially close it. So it's no longer a problem. The Imperium keep denying him. So in protest, he stops sending the tithe, essentially to say, hey, you want this, send me what I request so we can get this done. And then that sparks a civil war kind of conflict.
Warder seed tithe. Various other interactions with the Imperium follow, including pushes by the Warders and other chapters into the Maelstrom, but every time the Imperium retasks his support elsewhere, and it's against this background that the Imperial fleet is fired upon, the Astral Claws saying that they refuse to give way to checks upon entering the Badab sector. The Imperium as a whole do nothing, as they see the Badab sector as a defence against the Maelstrom, but the neighbouring Carthan sector, who relied on the raw materials of that tithe, are incensed. They respond by trying to steal the tithe back, or by spreading rumours that the Astral Claws and Huron are traitors. And eventually, all the Warders chapters published the Articles of Just Secession, saying that while they'll continue to defend the Imperium, they refuse to have anything to do with their neighbouring sectors. When the Carthan sector's administratum call for their own Astartes aid and a Firehawk ship is fired upon, things spiral from there. So you end up with a much more complex reason for Huron to turn against the Imperium, one which doesn't necessarily require chaos, corruption, or for him to be a rogue madman. It's the story of a commander tasked with keeping a sector safe, and who takes matters into his own hands when he doesn't get the resources he needs to do so. After this, the story unfolds in a similar way, following the general plot points of the previous fluff, while filling in a lot more detail and flavour. Volume 1 covers the story through the initial involvement of the Astral Claws, the Lamenters clashing in the space lanes with the Firehawks and the Marines Errant, and the escalation of the conflict. When the High Lords send investigators who demand the secessionists step down, they reinforce the Loyalist forces with the Red Scorpions, the Fire Angels, Raptors, Nova Marines, and the Howling Griffins, and the book carries the story up to the point where the secessionists are largely contained and the space lanes are secured. Volume 2 then deals with the war.
So, I mean, again, it seems like a lot of these factions are, I guess, still in place and have just been updated, but I just haven't heard a lot about these. So, I mean, like, where do some of these chapters fall under? Like, are they splits off of, because, like, you know, my understanding is that each legion had its own Primarch, and then, you know, they got split up into chapters afterwards and have no more than 1,000. So I guess they're like, essentially these chapters are still from, you know, like, you know, I'm trying to think of what one of the chapters, like the Minotaurs. Okay. So would the Minotaurs be like just another 1,000 group that split off from the Ultramarines? Because the Ultramarines kind of have this, like, you know, Greek-Roman theme. And the Minotaurs, again, are kind of that, you know, Greekish theme. Would they be like a split off of just another 1,000, you know, group from the Ultramarines or whatever? And then would they still, I guess, essentially answer to Rabute Gilliman? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to think of how some of these chapters and whatnot work. And where they necessarily, and like where they came from, whose Primarch are they represented from, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I guess if anyone has, you know, answers to that, let me know down in the comments if that doesn't get answered here in this video.
Are largely contained and the space lanes are secured. Volume 2 then deals with the war directly against Badab, and as various Loyalist forces are rotated out, the involvement of much darker and bloodier Loyalist chapters requested by the Inquisition. In this book, we get background for the Salamanders, Mantis Warriors, and Executioners, but also for those darker Loyalist chapters.
So, and I'm assuming
darker and bloodier Loyalist chapters requested by the Inquisition. In this book, we get background for the Salamanders.
So, like, I'm assuming that this is like the Salamanders, like Vulcan Salamanders, you know? And it's like, so is this like, is this them pre-heresy? Because this Badab stuff is supposed to happen before the Horus heresy, right? So I would assume this is pre-heresy. Okay. So this is just like the Salamanders pre-heresy. But then again, like, I don't know. I'm just kind of confused, I guess, as to where these chapters come from. Because if it's pre-heresy, you know, a lot of these chapters, wouldn't they still just be part of whatever legions, whatever Primarch Legion they would be associated with? Wouldn't they still be part of that? You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? Wouldn't they still just be part of that Legion and not be like its own chapter? The chapters didn't come till after their heresy, right? So I don't know. I guess I'm just a little confused as to where a lot of these, or what a lot of the origins of some of these chapters are, what Primarch or they represented from, you know, what original Astartes legions were they a part of, in that kind of thing, or is this just some kind of lore that happened before that? You know, like this has been cleared up afterwards, and this is just old stuff that he's just going over, essentially.
Mantis warriors and executioners, but also for those darker loyalist chapters, the Minotaurs, the Sons of Medusa, the Space Sharks, now called the Carcharodons, the Exorcists, and finally the Star Phantoms. Both books are packed with art, and it's the first time the Marine chapters are shown in the same sort of huge variety we're used to now. Armor marks and weapon types are mixed, and there are even some callbacks to the original camo colour scheme, even if they're not quite as crazy as the Tiger Stripes. The book also includes a campaign system that roughly charts the main events of the war without being too prescriptive about who fights which battles, something previous Imperial Armor books had done. The campaign is broken down into phases, which have various restrictions on the sorts of games that can be played, and a couple of famous missions each. It also includes an
So this also kind of lays out the kind of wars that you could play through. That's tight. I like that. So it gives you like various scenarios of war games that you could play through with your own groups if you wanted to. All right, that's cool.
Expansion, Blood in the Void, for playing Zone Mortalis games to represent boarding assaults in spaceship corridors. Rules-wise, the books included 2 new variant army lists. The Tyrant's Legion represents the massively augmented PDF forces of the Badab sector, and it's a mixed force of Imperial Guard and Renegades and Heretics units led by Astral Claws. The Guard units include the conscript-like Legion Auxilia and the more trained Auxilia Armsmen, their command sections, various standard Imperial vehicles and Imperial Navy flyers from the Badab fleet. The Marine units, though, are much darker, from the Retaliator squads, assault infantry with chainswords and combat shields chosen to enforce loyalty in the rank.
Well, that even has the point scale for the different types. So melters are 5 points. I assume this is probably because they're close range. Flamers are free, again, because they're probably close range. The plasma pistols, power weapons, heavy bolters are 10 points. Las cutters are 5 points. Plasma pistol 15, and these are veteran sergeants. Okay. Interesting.
Ranks by bloody example, to corpse takers, Astral Claws apothecaries whose purpose was to recover the gene seed of not only Astral Claws, but also any other fallen space marines they could.
Okay, and I could see that as being a cool little objective you could add in the fight too. If you have an apothecary unit, they go down there and they extract the gene seed from downed enemy marines, or even, I guess, potentially friendly marines, and extract them. You could get extra points for doing that. That'd be cool.
Could harvest from the battlefield, regardless of whether the subject was living or dead. You get additional victory points for killing enemy Space Marine units nearby. The second list, the Space Marine Siege Assault Vanguard, is intended to represent larger and more heavily armoured Space Marine forces during the siege of Badab itself. This is mostly a reclassification of existing Space Marine units. It allows Siege Dreadnought Talons and ground-pounding assault squads as troops, includes tactical squads equipped with siege mantlets to push forwards across open ground, and groups a lot of existing Marine vehicles into squadrons. It's commanded by a Siege Master with better control of reserves and who can upgrade certain elite units with various universal special rules. The books also include special characters for every chapter involved in the conflict. Most of these are just in the form of profiles, but some of the main chapters, the Astral Claws, the Minotaurs, and Forge World favourite, the Red Scorpions, get multiple new characters supported by a range of model kits and conversion bits. The Astral Claws had models for Lufthuron and Amaneus Valthex, their master of the Forge. The Minotaurs got Asterion Moloch and the chaplain Ivanus Encomi, and the Red Scorpions get Magister Severin Loth and Commander Karab Cullen. Karab Cullen's an interesting aside. He's a recurring character in the Forge World books, first appearing in the Amphileum Project as a sergeant and then in the Siege of Rax as a veteran sergeant. Other releases around this time include Tiberos the Red Wake for the Carcharodons and Brayoth Ashmantle for the Salamanders. These 2 Badab War books are beautiful examples of what Imperial Armor did best, finding small variation and fine detail in really big stories. And the work in these 2 books would have a huge influence on what Forge World did next, the Horus Heresy series.
Okay. So that led up to them doing the series. Interesting.
The studio for the next decade. And while the Heresy series is huge and expansive and features all the fine detail of the 30th millennium, I kind of prefer the Badab War. When writing Badab, Alan Bly said he wanted something where Space Marines were mythical, a war of the gods. But what I've always liked about it is how human the reasoning is and how much that adds to the Imperium as a whole. I'll leave it there for now. I'm going to do another video.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like the 40k universe in general, is because of that. It's like a sci-fi version of mythology that I love, from like Greek, you know, Norse and Egyptian mythology. You know, I like, and the way the Primarchs are and how they're represented, they seem very mythological and mysterious. The Emperor is this kind of all-powerful being, very mythological and mysterious. You don't really know much about him, what his plans are. Is he really this all-knowing, all-powerful being that is just a man that represents the pinnacle of what man could become? Or is he something greater? Does he have a purpose, a plan for everything? Or is he just, in fact, a man, you know, that happens to have all these great powers, you know, still fallible, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And just, you know, now also kind of getting into some of the biblical stuff with, you know, Saint Celestine and a lot of these people who are able to manifest miracles because of their faith and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the 40k universe, is because of all of this kind of how they've kind of uniquely put together things from other references, cultures, etc., or whatever, into this sci-fi future fantasy, you know, galactic war setting where everything's turned up to, you know, 20 on the knob. You know what I mean? Everything's like beyond maxed out. That's why I really like learning more about it, and the lore and stories and characters, etc. It just makes it that much more fascinating.
Where I go through how much that adds to the Imperium as a whole. I'll leave it there for now. I'm going to do another video where I go through the actual story, at least the one in the Imperial Armor books. But
okay.
I hope you've enjoyed this.
You might do that as a follow-up then.
Thanks for watching.
All right. Might do that one as a follow-up then, if I can find it. If he has done that already, and I can find that one. But yeah, so there you go. That's the Badab War. I guess this is like, as he was talking about it, I thought this was kind of like early information that might have been changed, and maybe it has still been changed, and I don't know, because again, this is pre-heresy. But you know, it seems like I felt like Badab was actually really kind of the story of Cadia, and they just like, this was like the precursor to it, and then they updated it and fleshed out the lore more and just named it Cadia, etc. Maybe that is what they did. I don't know. Or if Badab's, you know, again, kind of its own world and its own reference, and, you know, whatever. But very interesting that, you know, if this is still its own lore and it is still intact, that there was, you know, another kind of Civil War-ish rebellion that happened from these Stardy Space Marines, and that it's actually kind of more of a grounded, down-to-earth, more human reasoning as to what happened. Essentially, I guess throughout the different iterations, but the most current one being that, you know, the head of one of the chapters wanted to go into the Maelstrom and destroy all the bad things there, make it safe for the Imperium, you know, altogether. The Imperium said, "Nah, dog, we ain't worried about spending resources and time on that shit right now. We got other shit to do." And so he withheld their tithe. Other factions that needed the tithe started spreading propaganda and lies that they were traitors, and that led to essentially, you know, a kind of a civil war happening. So very interesting, and I would actually not mind following up and seeing if I can find. Looks like he does it down here in the description. The Badab War, the complete story in 25 minutes, 40k archives. So I might do a follow-up video on that next, and just, I guess, see the whole complete story about it. Maybe we'll flesh out some of these questions that I have a little bit more. But that's gonna do it for now for this video, guys. Really appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out, watching this video through with me. Again, as always, links down below in the description for this video and to Arbiter Ian's channel. So go check out his stuff. He's a great content creator, makes a lot of 40k stuff. If you would do me the favor of checking out my YouTube membership benefits, seeing if any of those tiers have any interest for you. If you've been around for a while and you enjoy my content and you would like to take that support to the next level, we have a lot of stuff that we do. So if you want to join in some of the discussions that we do during their live streams, there's a Discord that's open to everyone. You can feel free to come in and hang out there. We do a lot of discussions in 40k and other various things in movies. And there's also, you know, a book club stream that is open to everyone that I do every Friday. So anyway, and we'll be adding more to that as time goes by. But regardless, I appreciate you guys just hanging out and watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it does help me and it helps the channel grow. And I hope you're having a wonderful day whenever you're watching this. Have yourselves a good one, guys, and I will see you on